right, I wanted to get into the final trial. And what I have loaded up here, uh, let me get on something else. I wanted to basically sum up, basically, in this trial, they had called me, we went into the prosecutor's office I was behind on child support by a lot because it was all rigged. High. I mean, there was no expert financial witness or anything, and it was just Denise Houston uh, playing voodoo accountant, and she basically put whatever numbers in there she wanted, and the numbers were put in to benefit her. Uh, and she benefited. Emily benefited. All these people have benefited from this divorce, by the way. And sometimes, I've been reading through it and looking through it with AI. And again, this is case 25012 Uh, the case really came down to mental health. They were able to basically smear me enough on mental health that my mental health was now being considered. And there's nothing wrong with my mental health. What we have is fraud. So they're coming and they're smearing me, and I'm going to go back and see where AI, because we're going to use AI completely on this, and this is like something. I'm going to start at the end of what AI has just concluded. Both professionals observe patterns, behavior, such as paranoia, fixation on unrelated topics, inability to focus, and lack of engagement with his children that raised significant concerns about Joe's mental health. These observations, combined with Dr. Tenner's psychological evaluation, led to recommendations for supervised visitations and further mental health assessments. So they've gone through and they've done a quickie. I mean, that's basically what they did. They basically have got me into this mental health assessor, and I'm going to start with, they got me in with this mental health assessor, and I'm studying all this information that's like bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Why was I an unfit parent? And it'll surprise you how little these courts care about your fundamental constitutional rights and the constitutional rights of children. They don't believe you have a right to be with your child. They believe that your child should be able to be taken by them for any reason whatsoever, and that's not what the Constitution says. So, I'm going to go into another question. And that question was this: what reasons, again, were cited by both Emily Nugent and James Phillips to label Joe as having mental health issues? And so between the two of them, this software is going to come in with every reason, and you're going to see how ridiculous and corrupt, because there's going to be fake evidence and all kinds of stuff going on here because there's money involved. Both Emily Nugent, Family Court Services Evaluator, and James Phillips, Guardian at Litem, cited several reasons to raise concerns about Joe Mullet's mental health. Here are some of the key points from their testimony. Emily Nugent's observation: inability to focus. Joe struggled to answer questions or discuss his children during interviews, even when redirected multiple times. There's no transcripts. And these are not the most honest people to begin with, but there's no transcripts on any of this stuff. And she has no evidence. And this is a history where there is no evidence. There is no evidence. It's them and their interpretations of what they heard and what they remember hearing, and they're all talking together, so they all get confused and overlapped with what they, and it mixes. Okay, so he's saying I couldn't focus on my kids, which is complete malarkey. It's complete malarkey, and that's no reason to. That's no reason to deny a fundamental constitutional right. Because if you do that, you need to actually submit hardcore evidence, and this isn't for something like really small. This is for fundamental civil rights. You need you need some proof of this. And now comes delusions of grandeur. He repeatedly mentioned his importance, intelligence, and contributions to society, including claims about analytical work and chemistry degree. I have my background in science and stuff, and so Kelsey was having a hard time in mathematics. And so I was looking forward to taking over with them. But, it was important to sort of mention that Kathy was out of bullets. I mean, Kathy was probably a 5th or 6th grade math level herself, and that's what Kelsey graduated at. I, on the other hand, I could do 14th year calculus. And, or if I couldn't do it I could study it well enough, and I could actually probably eventually solve good problems, which we're going to get into. But so say I'm 14th year because I passed 2 years of college calculus, and here's your daughter in 5th grade when they're pulling all this malarkey, trying to say that you have mental health issues and they're psychoanalyzing you, and they don't have any evidence at all, and they're making it up. We're going to get into all of that, but yeah, so that gets turned into a negative now. Delusions of grandeur are linked to just saying, I have a chemistry degree. In other words, they attack it. The minute you say, I have a degree in something, it gets attacked. It now becomes delusions of grandeur, and it's a mental health issue. That was was it Emily Nugent? Are we on Emily Nugent? Emily Nugent's observations, all right? Delusions of grandeur, telling them that you've got a degree basically in math, and you basically can help your kid, but now she never even got to the 5th grade. Paranoia. Joe expressed concerns that the court, the state of Ohio, and others were against him due to his political affiliations and alleged work on teacher salaries, D-trade. He also mentioned concerns about snipers following him. This is complete fraud right there. That's fraud. And I spent 3 weeks thinking about this or looking for it. And he did mention to me in an email at one point in time that he had serious concerns about a sniper following him. No, nobody sent you a sniper email, Emily. In fact, I looked in my email box. I said, snipers, wow, on my sent thing. I still have the same email. I can still query all the way back to, really when I had this Gmail account, and that was probably 2005. I've had the same email account for 20 years. And so I query sniper. There's nothing. Sniper to Emily? No, there's nothing about snipers to Emily. And so I go down, I chase this down, and it would be to the point where I had to go into her case file, but she didn't submit any evidence. This is another point where there's no evidence, and then there's just some wild statement going out there that it's just complete bullshit. Now, if there is a sniper email, and she really did get one, I believe it would be Denise Houston that was the one sending it. It would not have been me. I think Denise Houston, because I don't think Kathy would have really understood the system well enough to think about that, doing that, and I don't think she would have been that involved. I think it was Denise Houston who was involved because she had monetary gain out of this trial that did that for that effect to make it look like I was paranoid. The Detroit thing now comes from a math report, and I told us about this, and it wasn't in this tone. Uh, I did not. I really don't like large groups of people that collude with each other. You know, there just seems to be you don't have that individual delivery. Where people can audit each other. They can sort of like check each other out, and it's sort of like an internal audit. But in government, if you look at the beginning of this trial, and you read through, you'll find out that James Phillips was talking to Emily Nugent. James Phillips was talking to Dr. Tenner. And I think on the other side, I believe when you look at, if you ask the document, did Denise Houston talk to James Phillips? There's nothing because they don't talk about that. You have to get that in their History Matters report where they report their justification for billing. And then you'll see that sort of information, which I would have to go over it. I've gone over it a few times, but I want to go over it one more time before I say anything big about that. There's no snipers. The Detroit just went back to a report that I had, well, oh yeah, against him due to his political affiliation. Let me read this to begin with, all right? We want to go line item by line item through this stuff. Paranoia. Joe expressed concerns that the court, the state of Ohio, and others were against him due to his political affiliation, alleged work on teacher salaries in Detroit. He also mentioned concerns about snipers following him. The Detroit thing is an actual math report that I was citing to show them that basically I can get all the way into college level math, but on top of, but beside that, it was a very interesting math report. Yeah, and you like to talk about it, but not many people know math. And if you know, I looked up on Google how many people, what people would test at. And Google said the majority of the people would test at a 6th to an 8th grade math level. So I'm talking about a 13th year math report with these people. And I sort of know Emily Nugent would never understand anything like what I'm talking about. She would never have in a million years understand differential calculus. And I'm talking like that, but I still like to talk about it, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But it's a valid. It was a valid report that I did, and let's see if it comes up anywhere else here, and then maybe we'll spring into it. They said I had minimal understanding of his daughter's diabetes. No, what I said was that Kathy was taking care of her diabetes, and that I would, there's a pattern to all of this stuff. There's a pattern that you have to know the pattern. And, so, yeah, it's just a simple little thing. I have diabetes. It's no biggie. You have to know when you test yourself, and then basically when you put some insulin inside of you when your sugar is high. And I do a very good job on myself of keeping it low. And I will tell you that Mandy went into Children's Hospital, and it ended up going up to 350 in Children's Hospital, and they knew she was a diabetic, and she went in for depression, or she went in for depression. This is what happens. This is really what happens when you put you try to, when trial is basically rigged, like this one is. But they took this completely out of context, and it was Dr. Tenner who made a statement about that. So she made the statement that Joe admitted. No, I did not admit. Where are the transcripts that say I admitted? But they do a lot of this stuff in these courts. Joe said. No, where's Joe? Where's the expert? I want to hear him. I want to hear the expert. I don't want to hear you. I want to hear the expert. And I want to be able to ask the expert some questions, and especially if it's a fundamental rights trial, which this one was, because you have a 14th Amendment right to your child. And they have to find something that rises to that level that would threaten your children. And they're making it up. Well, let's go through everything. So he said, they said that I admitted that. No, I did not admit that. Yeah, they said that I blamed him from excluding. Well, she was in a relationship. She was not focused on me, So you can imagine you're living in a house with a girl that's involved in a premarital relationship. So there was, there was an edge there, that basically there needed to be that overlap, and there wasn't that comfort level going on. Emails, all right, so they said I sent some hostile emails and obsessive emails Joe sent Kathy, which she believes further indicated mental health concerns. There was nothing in the emails. These are some emails that were sent when I was finding out Kathy was basically involved in moved into another guy's house, and there was a couple words exchanged, but nothing was threatening. I mean, I'm not, and on top of that, she lives in Hartville. It's from Hartville to Firestone Park, Akron, I mean, that's a little bit of a drive, and I'm not driving there in the evening, and she knows I want to drive there in the evening. But they made that into a big thing. They made that event. So what I will be doing is I will be gathering those hostile emails that they said were hostile, and I'll be comparing them to some text messaging that me and Kelsey do. We text message all the time, and you can compare between the two. You can compare between the two. They can go and they can say these emails are outrageous, and they can just trump them up, and they're very biased, and so they exaggerate things outrageously. Everything is just animated and outrageous. James Phillips observation: difficulty staying on task. During interviews, Joe could not stay focused on questions about his children, and instead fixated on unrelated topics such as teacher salaries and Detroit economic decline. I don't know. I talk about this report, but this is like I said, this is a 13th year report, and you'd like to find somebody to engage with. The only one that I could really engage with is my brother-in-law, and we took calculus at Akron U together, and I had to move this thing to another level of presentation to even present it to him. And he understands it, but most people would not understand 13th or 14th year math, but we understand it. So yeah, he was like, yeah, how did you get that? So he got excited about it. But these people are 5th or 6th grade, so they don't get it. And I realized that early with Emily, and I just said, nah, I'm not even going to go there, talk to her about it or anything. But I only talked to her just real briefly, too. I mean, this isn't like Emily was around me that much. And I think I may have sent her one email, and there was nothing in there that would, be mental health. It would be like you just talking to somebody, and somebody comes in between and says, you have mental health issues. All right. blaming others, Joe constantly blamed Kathy for everything, including his lack of knowledge about his children's routines and medical needs. No, I can catch on to their medical needs pretty quick, but all I need some crossover and some talk between Kathy. They're once again, they're using this as a cause to basically take your custodial rights away. And they're viciously, they're not citing, Joe constantly blamed. See, they're making up their citations. I mean, they don't, these people right here, they don't have transcripts of me saying it. They don't have any evidence. They don't have any transcripts. It's hearsay. So the evidence is hearsay right here. Blaming others, that's hearsay. The Detroit thing is partially true. It's a subject I enjoy talking about. I enjoy talking about this derivative that I was working on. Difficulty staying on task. Am I staying on task? You know, and so they're saying the teacher's report is just to show, hey, you know, you're 13th grade math, but then they would say that shows, well, let's move to the next one. Paranoid thoughts. Joe made statements suggesting paranoia, such as believing his daughter spiked his food to take a picture of him passed out, allegedly in collusion with Kathy. That's a malicious misstatement. That is not what I said. That is not what I said, and I actually have it over here. I actually have that over here. At the 9/18 hearing, I basically... Okay. Did Joe Mullet ever talk about his drink being spiked? I'm talking to AI. Yes, Joe Mullet mentioned during the proceedings that his sister Rose told him she overheard Kathy saying she was spiking his drinks. However, he stated that they did not know what she was allegedly spiking his drinks with. So this right here, this is what was said. And Kleckner heard it. Tenor would not have been there. The guardian at Litem would not have been there. But Denise Houston would have been there. Denise Houston, but we know Denise Houston is biased. You know, Denise Houston is thrown as so many banana peels in front of you, just trying to break your custodial rights any way she can break them. So that's what I stated, but it got spun to be this. Suggesting paranoia, you know. So in other words, they take what I say, they put a spin on it, and then they get their own meaning. They get significant meaning that would change the outcome of the case. And that's what the effect was supposed to be. Now, the person this came from was Dr. Tenor. So, you know, my questions are between Dr. Tenor and guardian at Litem, James Phillips. How much were you talking to my doctor? And why isn't my doctor, why aren't my, things sealed, you know? And even if that's legal, which I haven't even gone into the legality of that, if there's legal consequences, because somebody's talking to the mental health assessor, and the mental health assessor is spinning things that are in the pleadings that guardian at Litem, Gal James Phillips, was supposed to read that he did not read. So now he's not available to the information, and he becomes a biased guardian at Litem because he's not including all the facts. So so they went through again, and so I'm going to tell you real quickly what it was. Kathy got talking to mom overheard by sister spiking drinks on one side versus how the spin. Kelsey takes picture of dad passed out and knows what to spike his drinks with when she's 8 years old. And she does it in collusion with her mom. Does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense, but the origin of that is Dr. Tenner's report. And that's crazy. That's stupid. I mean, but we got her. We didn't say that. Alcohol use. Joe downplayed his alcohol consumption, but admitted to drinking more after meeting Kathy. He justified his drinking as a treatment for his inflammatory bowel disease, which both Dr. Tenner and both Phillips and Dr. Tenner found concerning. First of all, they've taken the real narrative they're trying to hide. The real narrative is this is the real narrative. Kathy saying that she was spiking his drinks. That's the real narrative. But they spin it to mean it's Kelsey spiking the drinks because somebody this is malicious. This is not like accident. This is well planned out. So that's the downplay on the alcohol thing, that you didn't want to really talk about the narrative, and you ended up spinning it. But the alcohol thing was that basically I would just drink at the end of the evening just to get to sleep, a couple beers or whatever, usually wine. But now I'll drink a couple beers. It's not, beer isn't that strong, but Kathy used that and tried to paint me as an alcoholic. And I wouldn't say she tried to paint me as an alcoholic. Her attorney was painting me as an alcoholic, and that was their narrative. So if you took any steam out of that narrative, they're going to attack you. Inability to care for Amanda's diabetes. Once again, this comes from Dr. Tenner's report. Joe admitted he did not know how to monitor Amanda's blood sugar or administer insulin, which Phillips found alarming the seriousness of her condition. No, I wasn't. Kathy would go all the way to sleep with the kids, and Kathy was a very dominating, controlling mother. Even my dad said, he said that girl is trying to own those kids. I mean, she just is like super possessive and controlling. And they were always with her. She's the one that was taking care of it. But certainly I was not, this is like something that you just give off instructions, and it's like 5 minutes worth of instructions, or write them down on a postcard. What time to check Mandy? What time should I be checking Mandy? How far in between, but I see I've got diabetes, and I know, it's type 2, but, there's some things you can do to help, but there, there's some stuff to it, but it's nothing really big. Taking a blood sugar reading is like nothing. I've done 20 zillion of them, and administering medicine's not a biggie either. None of that stuff is that hard. And like I said, I used to work with instrumentation. Yes, I can do a finger pricking. He even said I couldn't even do a finger pricking, and it shows you the level of exaggeration that this exaggeration and bias guardian at Litem has. But just him not reading the pleadings and not being engaged with all this information when I was involved in identity theft And like I said, I have another short flick that I put together, and it goes into those pleadings when I was having ID theft, as I discovered I was having ID theft, and I discovered I was indigent. Uh, and so you can follow it all the way through the pleadings I put on, but they never read one pleading. I was pleading to see my kid for school. I was pleading to this and that. Nothing ever got adjudicated. Nothing was ever read. And anything that was, nothing ever got read, you know? He was the one that was supposed to address all that, but I had never been in the court system. I didn't know what a motion was. I didn't know what a pleading was. I didn't know what an objection was, an appeal. I didn't know any of that stuff. And if James Phillips had read those pleadings, he would have known that I had put on in those pleadings that I needed counsel. I needed counsel. He should have read the pleadings, and he should have said, Joe, if you're indigent, we can get you free counsel. But he didn't do that, and the courts ruled incorrectly because I also had the evidence on that in that video that I did have the evidence that I was hit with ID theft, and they had lied about it. So they had already lied about ID theft. So this is just a stack of everything. Like everything you see that they say, it's like just think opposite. I mean, it's not reliable, and it all is basically part of a narrative. So that's not Kathy was taking care of it and everything, and I wanted to be more involved, but Kathy was in a premarital affair, and she was touchy. I mean, she can be very, very touchy. Like you get away from her, and Kelsey understands that. All right, these are the things their behavior during supervised visits. The supervisor at Common Ground noted that, well, if the supervisor at Common Ground is, well, let's see. The supervisor at Common Ground noted that Joe mumbled to himself during visits and did not engage meaningfully with his children. Well, number one, the supervisor, if this is a fundamental rights hearing, the supervisor should have been present for cross-examination, and there should have been at least counsel. But other than that, that does not rise to any mumbling. Does not rise in her interpretation of engagement. She has no video. There's no evidence. There's a whole heck of it not. And James Phillips is citing it secondhand hearsay because he had no experience he did not do his visit with me. See, he was supposed to visit with me and Kelsey, me and Mandy. And that is a requirement of Rule 48. So he's got his second Rule 48 violation. He didn't visit with us personally and see how we interacted. And so instead, he's citing the secondhand hearsay and that he's, making up, or that's even given what he's saying, it doesn't rise to the level of taking away one's fundamental rights. This just means that the state can come in and they can come up with some phony baloney and they can take your kids, which they did. Psychological evaluation. Dr. Tenner's evaluation raised concerns about narcissistic personality tendencies and compulsive behaviors. She recommended a full psychiatric evaluation and substance abuse assessment. Yeah, nobody was an alcoholic. You can have a couple beers or drinks in the evening. But here again, she gets into some new terms. she gets into some new terms. But then if you look at her report, there's 2 citations that she actually, I don't think I have Tenor's report up here. I wanted to get into it, but there's 2 errors right here. Number 1, and one is a provable error because I put on docket and I put in the 918 hearing, and I put on docket. There's a docket entry also stating, mentioning that Rosie told me that she overheard Kathy talking to her mom, saying that my drink was spiked. So that was one error. She basically did the twist on it and said that Kelsey, who was 8 years old at the time, understood what medicine to choose and colluded with the mother to take a picture with me passed out. And then he found that highly disturbing and, this is a danger to the child. It's all ponied up. It was started with Tenor. This spin ended with and the spin ended up as he's a threat to his child. It's just it's absolutely ponied up. So I wanted to get into that mainly, and I wanted to get into I wanted to get into the education also in this video. The education I had made in many places. I had put evidence that I wanted to get involved in the children's education, and what had happened was her attorney was very aggressive. You send her a couple emails, and then her attorney makes a case that those emails are offensive. Of course, I never really objected because nobody was reading my pleadings. Why would I expect if I threw another pleading on there objecting, who's going to read it? Who do you send it to? Do you send it to a different person or what? I have no idea, and I don't have counsel. Now understand that James Phillips was supposed to provide counsel, but he didn't read the pleadings. And to see that I was putting on these pleadings that I needed counsel. So there was no objections to these emails that were phony baloney, so I have to basically go back over and show that those emails pose no threat at all to Kathy. None at all. And her attorney was spinning it to mean, this is like he's a threat, and all kinds of stuff. And she ended up getting rulings from Magistrate Kleckner that I think it was he's menacing or something like that, at least menacing. She would say at least menacing, and then she would know that that's linked to a certain, punishment. You know what I mean? And so she chooses her words quickly. She chooses her words to fit what she wants to do. She wants to take away your parental rights. So that was never objected to, just because they were never answering pleadings, and I thought, why even bother? And they put me in common ground as a result, and so they were getting observations, a common ground on all these copped up charges, and what happened, this was all during Kelsey's early childhood development, and that's what the real main issue is that they're going through all of this stuff. They're just going in. When you have kids, you got to get them into school. You got to catch up on their schoolwork. You got to catch up on and they're throwing you banana peel after banana peel in front of you to take away your custodial rights for nothing, citing absolutely nothing. And so what happened was Kelsey ended up at a 5th grade math level. she ended up at a fifth grade math level, and instead of the math level that I could have promised her that she could have gotten through all 12 years and probably been college prep and gotten into calculus right off the bat in high school, in college. No warm up classes, nothing. But now she doesn't even know calculus. And the story on that is that uh, I thought Kelsey was into some special programs to keep her caught up, but she was not being caught up. And Kathy, by the time she was in ninth grade and algebra, Kathy said, "Can you help her in math?" And so I started working with her, and for a few months, I don't know, it was like 2, 3. It was. I think I started in November, and we tried to go throughout the entire. We went throughout the entire year, but she had to retest, and she had to go back to the fifth grade. That's where she actually tested. Now, when she was in the fifth grade, this is when all this shit is going on. They're throwing wild allegations at you because they don't want you to have custodial rights. They don't want you to have custodial rights because they can't profit from it. And that's exactly what this is about. So I'm going to be going over those emails again. I can't show you that's going to be a separate subject. But the school, getting back into the schools, uh, yeah, I was ready to go up and going, and I'm going to ask some more questions. What did what did say Joe said about kids education? See, this is the true narrative. I mean, they're taking noise. They're taking noise, and they're trying to make that noise outweigh the real signal and the real discussions. This is the real signal right here. This is the real McCoy. James Phillips testified that Joe struggled to focus on discussing his children during their interview and had difficulty providing any meaningful education about them. Phillips stated that after nearly an hour, I don't know if it was an hour, he had to explicitly ask Joe to tell him something about the kids. And this is another thing. It's in my opinion, James Phillips has already tampered with witness because he talked to somebody. She talked to Dr. Tenner, who has two errors that I can pick out on her report that were significant reports. One was for the misstatement on the spiking of the drinks, that I have absolute evidence I didn't say that. And the other was basically saying that Joe told me that he could not care for Mandy. That was the other thing. He told me. So she's basically speaking on my behalf, and that's not whatever she says. There's no transcripts on it. There's no evidence. It's just another way to start pushing hearsay in the trial. It's like, if you have the trial, come to the trial with the evidence and talk about the evidence. And what you think you remember hearing is not evidence. Put it in writing. Make sure there's a recording or transcripts or something. But she didn't have that information, and so she's able to slip certain things in there to get this trial to swing around. So somebody who's a good parent does not have access to their parent. And I caught her twice. Now, she had a bunch of hokey pokey, we were taking these little tests and everything, and she was claiming that these tests meant this or that, but I had no idea anything. But, the validity of the test that she's is citing. I did not get into the test method and the daily lingo of what that test is supposed to mean. So he comes there and he's just trashing me, and he's just saying Joe couldn't tell me anything. Well, why don't you just have the thing is he could have just had a little form, an online form. Tell me something about the kids. I'm sure I probably did it again. I did it in another spot, with the in interrogatories. I answered that, but they don't read the interrogatories because they don't think they're getting the answers they want. The questions keep on coming until they find something they can spin to make something perceivable the direction they want it to be. Kathy put the kids to bed. Kathy put the kids to bed every night, and she slept with them in bed. I would go up and say goodnight to them, or, you know, uh, but Kathy was very in control. She was very much in control. All three kids slept with her till like they were like 5 years old. But Mandy had diabetes, so Mandy actually had to be in the bed with her. But it got crowded. You couldn't fit four people, and when we tried to fit four, she basically kicked me out for snoring, and so I would go downstairs and I would play with some mathematics that I was working on. Yeah, so they're saying I know nothing about the kids, but I coach soccer. I got involved. I mean, the one thing I did want to do with both of my kids is I wanted them to actively be involved in sports, because I was always involved in sports as a kid. And I always remember being on a team. And I wanted that just so that they could actually blend in, and they could get friends, they could integrate and get exercise and stuff like that. So I had started a soccer team, and I coached it for like 3 years. And it was a lot of fun. It was a ball. I mean, it's just, I absolutely loved that. I mean, that was just incredible. But yeah, we had a soccer field that was right next to our house, so we could go out there and I could play with the kids. We could bump the ball around, or uh, do different things. But the soccer team was good. And as soon as I got out of it, as soon as we basically, this divorce went on, their sports, no involvement in sports. And Kelsey was a hard person to get to make involved in. Uh, she's shy. She wants like the same friend over and over. She's not like Kathy. Kathy goes through friends like uh, she's got a new friend every other week. Um, but for Kelsey, it would have made a whole heck of a lot, because it's being into something, baseball, just anything, sports wise would have really helped her out, and now she complains, she cries all the time. I have no friends. I have no friends. This goes all the way back to this time when James Phillips is basically spinning every word this guy can spin, he spins. No, I coach soccer. We would go roller skating. That's the things I did with them. I would try to be involved with them. Uh, in at least the like phys ed field, I kept up with them. The academic field, I let her mom. I mean, I just had so many problems. We had a housing meltdown and stuff going on, and we got hit hard. We had three properties. We didn't have one. We had three, and they lost significant value, all three of them. And so we were underwater on not one property, but well, I think I had some of these. Yeah, yeah, I was underwater on three properties. It would have been all. No, no, no. Well, I would have been underwater on two properties, meaning I owed more than the house was worth. And so that caused us all kinds of problems because then we had no money, we had no security, we had nothing as a basis to borrow against, no assets, and so it just absolutely crushed the financials. And I was on that all the time. That's one thing Denise Houston won't go into is because she wants her narrative. She wants only her narrative. So Kathy would put them to bed, and her mom was basically involved in the little flashcards and stuff like that. And I thought, well, that's cool. She can get to bond with grandma. Get to bond with mom. But their educations only go up a certain level. They only go up to maybe the 5th or 6th grade math level. And like I said before, I queried this on the internet, and I said, what is like the average math level that people would test at? And it's only sixth grade to eighth. It's 6th grade to about 8th grade. Once they get in algebra, there's some fundamental thinking changes. There's a way you have to think about the subject. And so most people never apply it, and most people never use it, but I did in my profession. So I was pretty good at algebra. So I knew when Kelsey came in, and I started tutoring her in like the early, well, she had missed a few lessons, but it was like November. She was having real problems in algebra, and her mom brought her around, and we had to bring her all the way back. But to put blame on this, James Phillips did not note education. He's looking at my mental health, making up all kinds of stuff to discredit my mental health. And this is just made up or altered things. There is nothing valid about anything he is saying. It's all ponied up. And the real evidence, he does not read the pleadings for the real evidence. So the real evidence would be in the pleadings. And so I want to bring this up is during this time what they're really trying to hide. Yeah, binder 2 is pleadings. Right here, I had the question already prepared. Where does Joe mention his desire? This now is going over. It's doing AI over all the pleadings. I loaded all the pleadings in, so I can cross-examine the pleadings. And these are the very pleadings that James Phillips basically he put down. He said you couldn't understand them. And basically, he made it appear that I was crazy about my pleadings. And now I already made a video on the pleadings because the pleadings followed. They followed a timeline of financial meltdown that basically the courts. It still has to be overthrown. It still has to be overruled that I did not have ID theft when I did have ID theft. They ruled that I did not have ID theft. And the reason for that was that they needed child support and alimony. And that's all that mattered. So that's why that ruling went that way. And they weren't going to let up, so they said, oh, yeah, he's lying. He's obviously lying, thinking that, somebody's doing a quickie on them. Well, it turns out I wasn't lying. And there's those stories in another video that I did. But on the pleadings, on 9/22/2014, this is they've already been in school. They've already been in school for a month, right? I don't have access to my kids because they're doing they're using these emails that were not really they were not threatening. They were not threatening at all, but they made it appear they were threatening, and I did not file any appeal or objection on that because I didn't have a lawyer because James Phillips didn't read the pleadings and offer a freaking hand. And knowing that this is a due process, noting that these are due process pleadings, it's really the size of the what is the value of what is going on here is very high because these are fundamental rights, and really for anything that they said would threaten my parental rights, it should have been written down, but James Phillips did not read the pleadings. I want to go. James Phillips did not read the pleadings. He testified to that. He testified he did not read the pleadings. But on 8/18, Joe mentions his desire to be involved with his children's education in the motion dated 8/18/2014. Now comes the defendant, Joe Mullet, to request a motion for continuance for lack of representation so I have a chance to file for joint custody of my minor children to be allowed to spend evenings at my residence. All right, that right there. If they were at my residence and they were going, yeah, because they had taken away all those custodial rights, and I wasn't sure what to do. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I'd been hit with ID theft, and now they're coming after me. I don't have any counsel, can't afford counsel, and I want to get involved in the kids. So let's go to the next statement that he would have read. So they're blocking you. They're blocking you. They're trying to create a narrative that you're crazy, that these emails are so offensive, they would rise to that level that to strip you of your parental rights, your fundamental parental rights, your 14th Amendment parental rights. They want to restrict with the smallest of the smallest, if even considered, violations, or the thinnest. I don't know how to put that, but things that are barely believable and outright lies and evidence that's not real. Citations that the people who cited it don't show up. This is what they want to base the parental rights on. But I'll let this guy just go for a second because I'm going to try to get done with this. I'll call him back. Yeah, so they refuse. I mean, at 8/18, they refuse. God, where do you have to call right now? All right. He states that the plaintiff refused to provide knowledge of schools or teachers of his children and claims he wanted to attend the first meetings with teachers, but he was denied by plaintiff. So here's a girl who can't really move Kelsey forward. Kelsey's stuck in the 5th grade. We're in the middle of these pleadings, and they're throwing one banana peel after another banana peel because they have to stricken you of their parental rights so they can get paid. And that's what that's about. I wanted to attend everything. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to do after school, make sure they were in sports. But they're crazy. They're trying to create a case, that basically denies 50-50 shared parenting because they say I am basically they say I'm an alcoholic. They fraudulently claim I'm an alcoholic, but they won't take the evidence that Kathy spiked a drink. They won't take that. In fact, they twisted that. So it takes the entire argument and it fundamentally changes the narrative of the case. And so that's what they're doing. They can't get back to the true narrative. Yeah, so I basically said, Yeah, I basically objected to. Yeah, I wanted to be involved in everything, but Kathy will listen to the teacher. She'll go back and forth, but she's not a real academic. I mean, she's just like so many others. But I had that ability to take Kelsey and them to a much higher level and completed at this time in Kelsey's 22 now, right? By this time, I had completed calculus. Uh, I had completed calculus, and a few years later, I was eligible to actually be working at big companies in their technical departments, which I have always had offers from. The big hang up is this. I mean, this when these divorce cases come in, they basically just paralyze people, and it destroys income opportunities and everything because they are coming out with a narrative, and they're using the slimmest of evidence, if any. And when they can't find evidence, they're fabricating evidence. So when we go over Dr. Tenner's report, and I don't think I have that loaded here, and I think that'll be a separate thing. We're gonna see the actual errors that I am talking about, and that uh, Emily Nugent and James Phillips are both uh, promoting that narrative, but they all collectively exchange information uh, verbally. They have discussions with each other, so there's not like their errors will be collective errors, meaning you will see these collective errors are collective errors because the citations uh, come from uh, Dr. Tenner. Now I'm going to show you something about Dr. Tenner because she had two errors of fact, and she they should have never used her testimony. She should have been there. Basically, she should have been there for questions as far as cross examination goes. Uh, where was I going to go with this now? Oh yeah, well, they were really anti-education. I mean, I had been pleading with them uh, to basically get involved in the education. I was at Common Ground, and now Kelsey's basically she graduated at a fifth grade math level, and I am going back ripping everything apart because I have already found. You see, I found when they made malicious statements saying that Kelsey spiked my drink, I picked that right away. When they mentioned snipers and there's a sniper email, well, let's go into that sniper email right now. Snipers in Detroit because Denise Houston wanted to link the two. Denise Houston wanted to link snipers with Detroit. Oh no, no, I'm in the wrong one. Let's go back to the trial, the 2-5 trial. Yeah, so right there, he had mentioned that I think I already mentioned this. I don't want to be redundant. Well, no, maybe I am in order. Maybe I didn't go down. I don't want to miss anything either. Oh yeah, So James Phillips said I didn't raise any questions, but if he would have read the pleadings, Yes, I did. Yes, I was on the pleadings, and he was not reading pleadings. It's a Rule 14 violation, and it has a significant impact on the. It has a significant impact on the case, because it shows I wanted to be involved in the education. James Phillips is citing a completely fraudulent narrative, and it's a complete narrative. It's like the Russian hoax. That's all it is. It's like the Russian hoax. Everybody's trying to spin it their own little direction, but this Adobe AI catches them. Yeah, right here, James Phillips is saying he's saying Joe admitted that the youngest child has juvenile diabetes. Yes, and he admitted he did not know how to manage her condition, including monitoring her blood sugar or administering insulin. Once again, there's no evidence behind this. James Phillips is already a very biased because he's been interacting with Denise Houston, and you can go to the History Matters report or how Denise Houston bills, and I think there's a few entries that are there, but I'm going to leave that for that point. But I believe that we have evidence there to support that. But I never said that. They're just basically putting words in your mouth that you didn't say to reach their narrative that they're trying to collectively reach. Joe also expressed a belief that Kathy had prevented him from being involved in the children's medical appointments, other aspects of their lives, which James Phillips found unconvincing and unsupported by the evidence. Oh yeah, this is funny. I mean, this is hilarious because here's Mr. I never have any evidence to go and support any of my claims, and he's claiming the same thing about me. Joe also expressed a belief that Kathy had prevented him from being involved in the children's medical appointments and other aspects of their lives, which Phillips found unconvincing and unsupported by evidence. But yet, every statement he says that goes as fact is it's not supported by evidence. Nothing he says is supported by evidence. It's all hearsay. So it's ironic that I just say that Kathy's not giving me the medical records or she's not giving me the updates or the briefs or whatever. All right, so the other thing I want to go with another one of the big spins. I want to go with the big spins, the big spin about snipers and this story about snipers. Where is the issue of snipers mentioned? Yeah, they got into this snipers narrative that I had sent Emily Nugent a sniper email. And she's the one who presented the testimony, but she didn't come with evidence. In other words, Emily Nugent is saying that I sent her a sniper email, which I never sent her a sniper email because I can check in my email box, but I really don't. I think there was me out of all these years of emails, collecting emails. I just wanted to see if I even mentioned it. I just queried for snipers, and it's like no, there's even no incoming emails, and there's no outgoing emails. going on involving the word snipers. So it's not a big time used word. So I knew it was sort of like. So she gets this email, and this goes against my mental health. She stated that Joe had expressed concerns about a sniper following him. While she did not recall the specific context of this claim, she noted that it was part of a running track record of paranoid thoughts that Joe repeatedly brought up during their interactions. So there you've got it. So she's using a sniper email where she's using a sniper email in an email right here. He did mention to me in an email at one point in time that he had concerns about a sniper following him. No, I did not send you that, Emily. I did not send you that. And so they get that as like one of your mental health issues. But I had tried to chase down because I wanted to see the evidence. So I followed due diligence, and I went as far as trying to get her case history and her written case history and stuff like that. And I don't think I was able to get that. I think that was like you have to get. It's more security clearance to go and get all their stuff, but. Yeah, there was no sniper email, and I think that Denise Houston had sent that. That's a big thing. And then I think did and here's the other thing. It's about this Detroit thing that they were mentioning. I wanted to get into this thing real quick. Because they were trying to put down my education. Denise Houston was always trying to put down the education. I should query 918, show you some more. We said the snipers was the one issue, and we went over the issue with the spiked drinks. What was the other issue? Them stating on behalf of me, hearsay evidence. It's their hearsay. Oh, yeah. I wanted to go into one more thing before I conclude this. Yeah, this is all ponied up. Everything they said, every bullet point is ponied up, and this is why I want this thing dropped. Please say that in English. Wrong lane. Say that in English. Can you say that in English? It came out in the wrong language. All right, yes, it was considered that what Joe said about Detroit and teacher salaries might be linked to his mental health issues. Yeah, I was fixated on subjects, but I want to go back over that, and I hardly talk to Emily. I hardly ever talk to Emily, but you can see they say delusions of grandeur. Once again, you can paranoia tendencies, but the Detroit thing was actually a real math report that I enjoyed doing. And like I said, it was basically it's over differential calculus. It's basically it was a derivative that I was working on, actually working on it for the first time, and it's been sort of peer reviewed. My brother-in-law basically he taught 2 years. Well, he's retired PhD physics and math from USC professor. He has a doctorate in it, and he checked over this. But I'm talking about a derivative, and what happened was what happened was I was working on some math problems, because I was thinking about getting back into the industry because I had worked as a chemist for a lot of years and I wanted to get back in the industry because I can earn a lot more in the industry, but I would not go through the industry with what these courts had put me through. I'm not going to work at a company until I get to the bottom of what is going on here, and it was just loaded to the gills with fraud. But what I was talking about, what I had done a few years back, and we can actually go back into this stuff, this piece of software. I was working on, well, better yet, let's just have AI tell you what I was doing. Was this report an attempt to design a gauge? So I was designing gauges. That's what I did as a chemist, design gauges. Well, I didn't design them all the time, but anytime you can get a good analytical method of something. And so this right here, uh, this was a report I had sent to Fox, and it's we can just look at this side. This side, I don't really want to get into all the mathematics on this side, but yes, the report was an attempt to design a gauge on measurement method to determine the percentage of total unemployment attributed to public school teachers' wages in 2005. The author aimed to create a mathematical and analytical framework using data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other sources to quantify the economic impact of teachers' compensation on unemployment rate. The report emphasizes the use of slopes, data analysis, and comparisons between metro areas to validate the method and invites others to challenge or refine the findings. So yeah, that's what I worked on. That was this report on wage gaps and population shifts that required spreadsheets. It was a scratch math problem, but I mean, you can see there's data and everything that goes on here, and it really was. It actually is conclusive for those who doubt it. It's my brother-in-law peer reviewed it. I'm going to bring it one more step higher and have him look at it. This is going to be sort of a step higher. I'm going to make a formal report on it for reference, but just for the cliff notes, it's a derivative that I was working on. dB is equal to FM x dm as m approaches zero. I was fighting for my child, custodial rights of my child, and everywhere they were throwing banana peels. You can't be shared parenting because you're a sloppy drunk. You drink 24/7. You can't even go to a meeting and not being drunk. Am I drunk? Have I been drunk in any of my little movie clips? And some of them have been. Uh, uh, some of those go all the way up until 9 in the evening. No, I'm not drinking in those. But the narrative was that I was a sloppy drunk, and so they pushed that to the point they abused it. They abused it, but they came after the education too. And so when they say Detroit, and this is the report I had discussed was just this is it's a slope. As slope approaches zero, what would the b-intercept be? In other words, this is I'm saying this is for shortcut. This is the derivative of a tangent. It's actually up for even more peer review. Like I said, I want to make a full report on it, but this was a real live report, and oh yeah. And this right here, I sort of learned Desmos when I was tutoring Kelsey. And then I realized where Kelsey was. I could have taken over for this. This just shows that, I can pick up where Kelsey was because I learned Desmos. And I thought, oh, that's a neat little analytical tool. Picked up on it and then basically plugged all that old data into this thing. And you can actually draw out the differential equation. And I'm saying that because I can do this level of math, but Kelsey got stuck at fifth grade with her mother after I had pleaded with these courts. They were taking everything that had no evidence, no value, or nothing that was to the level of taking away your parental rights, and they were hyper exaggerating. And that's the other thing I wanted to bring up for this, and so I think it should all be dismissed. In all honesty, their evidence is rotten evidence. It's hysterical evidence. The claims that these are reasons that should even challenge your parental rights are very scary. That you can take kids away for nothing. Really nothing. Oh, his dirty dishes, that was a sign of mental health. Problems, and you do it through the mental health. And so I'm like looking at Dr. Tenner. I don't think I went through her online reviews. Yeah, I wanted to get into her online reviews, but Dr. Tenner, who was the source of all of this stuff. Dr. Robin Tenner, you can look at her online reviews, and these are sort of revealing about what you're going to get out of this woman. "25 ratings, and the only thing holding her rating up is her own. The only thing that brings it up 0.5 is her own rating of herself. Yeah, she goes through, and everybody is going. She's testified in their cases, and this one gets a 5 for some reason. I don't know what it is, but told the husband that he would win sole custody even before contacting the mother for interviewing. Yeah, so she's the one who basically dictated my parental rights, because what she was doing was spinning things. She would put a couple spins on, and then they would pass these reports over to the courts, and these courts are still not, you can't cross-examine them. They don't bring Tenor into the courtroom to cross-examine, and then she puts little things on there that stick, that are just basically, you can find they're unprovable, and she did 2 on my report. So that's believable. Falsified documents and records. She falsified things I said. Is that a repeat of the same one? Yeah, probably a repeat. Report, negligence, abuse, corruption, overbilling, corrupt ties to Summit Domestic Courts to Ohio. In her field for only money. Never listened, abusive, further destroyed my children. Kelsey tested it at 5th grade based on her testimony and all the hearsay being thrown out by a guardian at Litem and Emily Nugent. I mean, they all basically somehow had evidence. It's like, where are you guys getting this evidence from? But they seem to have all kinds of evidence, and it's all hearsay, it's tooth fairy stuff. Yeah, right here. Yeah, they call it clearly a part of a corrupt Summit County domestic court known for selling children to high bidders. In other words, they went after me for money. That's what they went after me for. So they could assess child support and alimony. That's why when I had ID theft, they could not acknowledge I had ID theft. Now they have to acknowledge I have ID theft. They have to overturn that, and they have to overturn all this mental health bullshit that they're trying to traffic children with. So the doctor actually is being nailed. Yeah, right there, she screws him up because they don't really look at the facts. They don't look at, like, where's your kid, who's going to be good for your kid's education, who's going to make sure they study, who's going to get them involved in extracurricular activity. No, all of this stuff gets either hidden or smeared, and just like the Detroit thing, that was the derivative, they turn that into a negative, and they just spin everything, and it's just it didn't. Here we have guarding at Litem spinning numerous things, and absolutely provable errors with evidence, with real. The only evidence coming into this court case is me, where I can find evidence against them. Greed, waste of time and money, disre angry, abusive, horrible with young children. Greed, all about money, never listened, became hostile. This woman literally threw a box of Kleenex at my head while crying for safety of my tiny children being abused by mentally ill mother. Later threw a calendar at me. Yeah, she looks like she's got a quick temper. Yeah, but these are people that she screwed over, and there's even more. You can just type in Dr. Tenor reviews, and I thought I had one that had 48 or 49, but yeah, there's always one review, so it's always like a 1.5. And this woman is actually testifying she's testifying. The other thing I'm going to say about Dr. Tenor, but I'm going to be going over this again. Yeah, look at the reviews one. Does does Dr. Robert Tenor ever testified? It, yeah, maybe I can say this right there. Yeah, right there. She was actually testifying on House Bill 508, and I was like going through AI, like I'm like, man, she's going to screw this bill up. Nobody's going to have any rights to their kids. They're just going to go and just for the not even an infraction for a set of dirty dishes that's now going to be linked to mental health issues. And she's testifying. Uh, she's actually testifying, which is really amazing. I investigated this document a little bit. Well, at any rate, I want to end it right there. She's testifying, and you can get the transcripts online. Uh, but it's in cases involving equal parenting, which she is like not an advocate at all for equal parenting because it cuts her out of psychologist fees, and we see even in my case how hungry they were. Basically, you can't get your parental rights until you visit her, and she deems you as not having mental health issues because you show signs of having mental health issues based upon this. And then you chase it down, and then you find out she planted the fake evidence. So that's all I'm going to say about this.